all of the opportunities that you've been hearing about today, about investment and opportunities to make money, have to be viewed within the context of what's happening with the economy. And I'd like to talk to you about that today, and kind of go into a little bit of detail about it. Essentially, the United States economy right now is like a patient on a heart-lung machine. How's the blood pressure? Great. The pulse rate? Fantastic. Arteriosclerosis? Not a problem. The patient's growing at 5.5% a year. The problem is it's the heart-lung machine that's doing it all. His heart and his lungs have nothing to do with it. You have this massive infusion of federal funding that is keeping the economy afloat. And it's got nothing to do with the health of the patient. It simply is the existence of that machine. And what we're going to see over the course of the next couple of months, certainly over the course of the next year, is what happens when they unplug the machine and the patient has to go back to breathing and pumping blood with his own system and can't rely on the heart-lung machine to do it. And those results could be very, very dangerous. 75% of the American economy is generated by consumer spending. That's not true in China, it's 30%. Not even true in Germany, it's less than 50%. In the United States, it's 75%. And consumers are not spending. Personal consumer spending was up 0.1% in the last month. It's absolutely flat. And the reason that there is some economic growth is all kinds of artificial measures the government is taking to make that growth possible. The big thing is that it's pumping money into the system through that heart-lung machine and pumping it like crazy. The currency in the United States, the money supply, has gone from $800 billion 14 months ago to $2 trillion today. It's almost tripled. And, you know, that's the money supply from the beginning of our history. I mean, it's unbelievable to have this kind of liquidity being pumped out. So the money supply has gone up by 2.5 times. And obviously, car sales have gone up 2.5 times. And home sales have gone up 2.5 times, and consumer spending is, what, it hasn't happened? Why not? The money's pumped out there. Well, the answer is that people aren't nuts. They're taking this extra money, and they're using it to pay down their credit cards and pay down their student loans, catch up on their mortgages. Some of them are investing it, and some of it put it in the PSP, the Posturepedic Savings Program. They stuff it under the mattress. But really, the metaphor I'd use here is that it's like Obama has filled up all of our cars with gas, but none of us is going out driving because the weather's terrible. And it's snowing, and it's raining, and it's cold, and we don't dare go outside. So we put our cars in the parking garage, and we don't spend the money. And we sit there with a full tank of gas, waiting for good times to emerge. And when the weather begins to clear a little bit, we're all going to go out driving at once. All of that money will suddenly come into play. And that is going to cause the real legacy of the Obama years, massive, unbelievable hyperinflation that should start at the end of 10 and going into 11. Now, inflation has two causes. There's demand pull, and there's cost push. Demand pull means that there's too much money going after too few goods and services, so the price goes up. And that's what's going to happen when we all start driving our cars, when the intense liquidity that's out there actually enters the marketplace. But that's not our most serious problem. Before that happens, we are going to have a huge cost push inflation. The nice thing about a demand pull inflation is, yeah, the prices go up, but you have more money. That's why there's the inflation in the first place. Too many people with too much money trying to buy too few goods. And yeah, the prices go up, but so does your income and so does everything else. Cost push inflation is what really is deadly, because the prices aren't rising because anyone wants to buy the stuff. In fact, they really are rising because nobody wants to buy the stuff. But the fixed costs of the business keep going up. And as the fixed costs go up, the business has to raise its prices to cover them. And the more it raises the prices, the more people don't buy the product. And the more they don't buy the product, the more the prices have to go up to pay for the fixed costs over a smaller volume of traffic. And the big fixed cost that we're looking at is going to be interest. Most American businesses finance themselves with debt, not with retained earnings, not with equity, but with debt. A small business wants to expand, it borrows the money. It's even just through a MasterCard, it borrows the money. Or it gets a small business loan. Or it rolls over the debt that it has. It has cash flow issues. It borrows the money. And right now, these rates are being kept artificially low because of the way the Federal Reserve Board is running the economy. Let's say I go to you and I say, hey, Mr. Bank, do you happen to have any mortgage-backed securities in your vault? And you say, mortgage-backed securities? God, I'm drowning in them. These are all these subprime mortgages, and I bought them, I bought shares in them, and the mortgages are all broke, they're defaulting, they're in foreclosure, and I've got these bonds and I can't get a nickel for $1 of a bond. Yeah, if I got them, you bet I've got them. Well, how much do you have? Well, I have about 100 million. Can I buy them from you? Oh man, you just made my day. How many cents on the dollar? 100. Are you out of your mind? Well, I'll give you 100 cents on the dollar for them. But they're worthless. Doesn't matter. But you don't have the money in your bank account. That doesn't matter. I'm the Federal Reserve Board. So I write you a check for $100 million and you give me this wallpaper in return. I basically created $100 million of money supply. That process has created $1.25 trillion of additional currency. $850 billion for buying worthless mortgage-backed securities. Now you're walking around with $100 million in your pocket that you got for nothing. So I come to you and I say, hey buddy, can I borrow $100 million from you? And you say, yeah, sure, I just happen to have $100 million some moron just gave me. How much interest will you pay me? And I say, I'll pay you 3%. And you say, 3%? Whoopee! I paid 0% to get the money. 3% is terrific. I do fine. I'll do that deal any time of day. Here's your $100 million back to you. That is how we are funding our deficit. It is not that China is lending us the money. They stopped. It's not that banks are lending us real money. They don't. We're funding our deficit because we're giving people money and borrowing it back from them at 3% interest. Now this process is going to stop next month, according to the Federal Reserve Board. And maybe they'll run it over for another month or two, but they understand they have to stop it, otherwise we end up with Weimar Republic kind of inflation, where they use it for wallpaper. Now when that stops, I've got to go out and borrow money from real people who are going to lend me real money, not this funny money that I create. And I'm going to have to go to China and borrow real money, and go to domestic creditors and borrow real money. And they're going to charge me interest. First of all, they know that inflation is coming. Secondly, they know that the country's running this huge budget deficit. Thirdly, every country in the world is trying to borrow money because they all ran a deficit to get themselves out of the recession. So naturally, they're going to start charging interest. And you're going to charge me now 6 or 7 or 8% interest. And not only do I have to borrow the new money to pay for the deficit Obama has racked up, I've got to roll over the current debt that I have. And I've got to roll it over from a 3% interest rate to a 7 or an 8 or a 9% interest rate.